Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Wednesday night, the 5th of December, 2018. Always have to look down in the corner of the computer to make sure I got the date right. It is 3 minutes after 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we are ending a day that was a bit unusual for a small area in South Jersey that got hit pretty hard around Atlantic County. We had a disturbance. We had a storm actually offshore and a trough that rotated back around it, what we call a Norland trough. And we usually see these kinds of troughs during the winter time. They don't happen very often. It's kind of like a north-south extension, sort of like an arm that comes around. And I've seen it often enough where that sets up over Long Island over the years, and you wind up where you get this sort of small area, maybe about 15 or 20 miles wide, and they get absolutely hammered with snow, sometimes 6 inches, sometimes 7, 8, or 9 inches, and then the surrounding areas get far less, and then you don't really have to go that far on either side, that you wind up with nothing at all. Well, that Norland trough set up in South Jersey today, over Atlantic County in particular, and that's where they had a general 2 to 3 inch snowfall, but there were some areas that got as much as 6, 7 inches out of that. So it's just pretty interesting. It's one of those little surprises, very hard to forecast. There were indications on the models last night of a Norland trough developing, but in terms of putting a top number on it, you just can't do it. So we're going to be talking about this storm that's coming into California that is going to head across the southern states, and it looks like the threat for a big snowstorm for parts of the interior mid-Atlantic states is growing larger and larger. And I'm talking about northwesternmost South Carolina, maybe a small portion of northeastern Georgia, at least the western half of North Carolina. If you cut the state in half, it might extend a little further east than that, and then on up into Virginia, from Richmond westward, and in particular in western Virginia, places like Lynchburg, Roanoke. Those areas could wind up seeing substantial amounts of snow over the weekend, and it is conceivable that there could be some areas there in North Carolina that might see snow for a very long period of time. We're talking about Sunday and lasting at least into Monday, and maybe even a little bit longer than that in some areas, depending on how this all finally works out. Now, with respect to areas further north, particularly when we're talking about, say, from Philadelphia to New York City on up to Boston, I think at this point I've really kind of seen enough where I just don't know how this is going to be able to move up the East Coast and take a track further north, given the whole structure of the jet stream. The northern part of the jet stream, which we've been illustrating for the last number of days, is just too strong. And we're at a point now where we have to kind of either start seeing it move out of the way or it's not going to move out of the way. And I really didn't see anything today that changes my mind on that. So I guess at this point we could start to think, well, where is the northern boundary of the snow going to be? And I guess we could probably draw a line somewhere between Baltimore and Washington where the northernmost fringe of the snow gets, but we're really talking about probably not very much in terms of accumulating snow. You're going to have to go south and west of there. So I'm thinking draw a line across southernmost Maryland, through the Delmarva Peninsula, maybe into southernmost Delaware, where that will be the northern fringe of the snow. And then for areas north of there, we may just be sitting in clouds. Now, if the northern jet winds up being a little bit weaker, maybe we can edge that line a bit further north in the next 3 days or so. But I think it's at the point where, at least for the northern parts of the mid-Atlantic states into southern New England, this is just not going to be a factor, and it's just going to be a cold weekend. So let's take you on the journey tonight to see what's going on. And first off, we'll start with the first winter storm watches up that are now up for much of northwest Texas and through the western half of Oklahoma. And we're going to see additional winter storm watches going up as we go through Thursday and on Friday. We're going to start seeing them push to the east. We have winter weather advisories up for the mountains in eastern West Virginia and in a small area in westernmost North Carolina. There's been some snow on and off all day long today with the upper trough swinging through, and that has produced some wintry conditions there. In fact, our own Johnny Quest said he had about 4 inches of snow today. And we've got some advisories up in southwestern New York and in north central New York because of lake effect. And that really is about it. Seeing the dark blue there, I believe that's a freeze watch or a freeze warning up for parts of northern Florida. I'll just give it a double check here to see exactly what that is. It's a freeze warning tonight for parts of southeastern Georgia and parts of northeastern Florida, where temperatures are forecast to fall into the upper 20s and lower 30s. That is the cold air that is over the east now. There's a reinforcing surge of cold air that's going to arrive Thursday night that sort of sets the table up for the weekend. I want to look at the Weather Prediction Center's 7-day rainfall map because, again, much of this is front end loaded. I think it's a pretty good indication of what their thinking is, and we're talking about less than 1/10 of an inch of liquid over the next 7 days throughout much of the Northeast until you get down to southernmost New Jersey. And the dark blue, which I think would be the significant precip of 1/2 inch of liquid, is south of Washington, D.C., and cuts West Virginia in half. So somewhere in there in northern Virginia, southern Maryland, across the Delmarva Peninsula, at eastward, maybe to the Delaware border, that's where I think you're going to see the northern fringe of the snow. And of course, you look at the big precip amounts that are being generated in southern Virginia and in through North Carolina on the order of 2 to 3 inches worth of liquid precip there. And then you're getting some big precip amounts as you head down closer to the coast, closer to the track of the low center. Also, big amounts in East Texas of 4 or 5 inch rain amounts. Probably going to see some thunderstorms there. We've got the northern fringe here where we have the winter storm watches up, so that's going to be for snow and ice. And the liquid amounts there are generally on the order of 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. So there is potential here for this to be a significant winter storm, certainly, as it moves across the southern states and then heads for the southeast coast. The low will head toward the southeast coast, and the snowstorm will materialize in the interior areas of the mid-Atlantic states. So time to bring up the window, if it lets me. Hope I don't have to go looking for it. Excuse me. There it is. It always likes to hide. Let me, while I'm getting this all set up, welcome to the folks from SNS Chase and Storm Chase and Forecast team, for which I do some writing for. And also welcome to the folks from Angry Ben's Angry Weather page, and from my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and also from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut Stormwatch page. And welcome those of you who are on my weather app on Android. And I'll give you guys the link to that a bit later. Just want to start with a couple of satellite loops tonight so we can take a look at what's happening in the east. You can see that coastal storm offshore that's moving away. You can kind of pick out that trough, that northern trough that swung around on the west side. And that low is going to move out. Then we've got some cloud cover around the Great Lakes, the next cold front getting ready. And of course, we can also see, and I have a tight view of this, the moisture that's coming in around the storm. The actual upper low is still offshore the coast of California, but not by much. But it has been streaming in a ton of moisture and rain into the southwest. And you can see the subtropical jet here coming out of the Pacific and riding up northeastward from there. So the puzzle pieces are certainly here on the satellite loop tonight. The signature of this system is going to be impressive once it moves out of the southwest and then begins its journey across southern Texas and out across the Gulf states. The radars tonight in the east, the snow in southeast New Jersey is done. We've got some snow showers in eastern Ohio, southwestern New York, not seeing much yet upstate New York, but a little bit up near the Canadian border and the Vermont border. Still seeing some snow shower activity down into West Virginia. Further south, pretty quiet down to Florida. Not too much happening until we go out to the west. And you're seeing some pretty heavy rain coming into San Diego and southernmost California and streaming up to the northeast, and then some showers as you go up the coast to just south of San Francisco. Nothing much of consequence going on in the Pacific Northwest. So the surface map tonight, the coastal low is evident there. You can see it out to the east, and that trough that's drawn right toward Atlantic City. So this was at 4 this afternoon Eastern time that this map was plotted for by WPC, Weather Prediction Center. And up here to the north, as we go near the Canadian border, up just north of the Dakotas from James Bay westward, that's the next cold front that is dropping southward with the next cold high and shot of cold air that'll be moving into the Great Lakes and the Northeast, and really pretty much setting the table not only for the storm for the weekend, but it will also be the anchor of what I would call the brick wall to keep the storm from riding up the East Coast. Here's the system coming into California with low pressure offshore and another low with the front there, or the occluded front that then becomes a cold front past the point of occlusion. The low sitting somewhere just south of Los Angeles, and all of this kind of translating its way toward the east. So to the upper air we go, and remember we have been watching and following this for days, and you can see the setup here. We'll bring up the paint box tonight and just do a little illustrating. So this is this is the forecast upper air that you're seeing. Hang on, let me clear the screen and get a better picture up. And good, so that works. So this is for 8 o'clock tonight. Now, of course, we've got the system. We have a strong trough moving off the East Coast right here, okay? That was a little troublemaker that wound up for southern New Jersey. Then we have another trough in the northern jet that is dropping down. So this is our next push of cold air. And then down here off of California, we've got our system that is moving inland. You can clearly see that there's two jet streams in play here. You've got this northern jet, very, very strong, moving along. It actually splits a little bit here in the east with that upper low and trough that's in New England. And then, of course, you've got the southern part of the jet stream, which is also very strong and very active, and that's bringing the California weather system eastward. And then that jet kind of continues until it gets to the East Coast, and it merges with that trough that's off the coast of New England. So split flow, busy Pacific, everything moving right along. And we're going to progress, and I'm going to now bring us to Sunday morning, okay? Because this is where you would probably consider this to be a fairly critical time in the stage of this storm, and with regards to where this is going to wind up going, whether it goes up the coast or not. And I want to just kind of show you here why I really think now we're at the point of no return. The models have been struggling with the jet in the north. They all have seemed to settle on this idea of this very strong northwest flow that comes down from central Canada across New York State and then out offshore. Okay, you just can't move if your storms are moving with the upper flow. You just can't move a low up into this strong northwest flow unless this jet stream were to lift out and pull up away to the northeast. It doesn't appear that that is going to be able to happen because we have a deep trough out in the Canadian Maritimes. It's off the edge of the screen, but it's just not getting out of the way fast enough. So this system has really no choice. This is our southern stream system here. This is at the point where you'd have to have either something come down from the north and phase with it, and then you would move out to the northeast, or, again, as I said, that northern part of the jet gets out of the way. If it can't get out of the way, this southern stream system, it's going to only be able to do one thing, and that's move to the east. You're going to get a surface low that's going to try and move northeastward along the coast. It's only going to be able to get so far north, and then it's going to get pushed out straight to the east. I don't see, believe me, I have been doing this for a long, long time. No one, probably very quietly and inside, roots for snow than I do. I'm a snow lover, and I admit that, but that does not get in the way of me attempting to make an accurate forecast based on what's in front of me. If there were any indication that that were going to be the case, I would leave the door wide open. I think the door is really, at this point, opened by a tiny crack and about to shut with regards to anything coming further north. I just can't see it. And we have out to Monday morning, and even by early Monday morning, just jumping about 18 hours later, I mean, you still have this northwest jet not even remotely close to getting out of the way. In fact, if the model is correct, so here's your base of the northwest flow. Sorry, that's kind of a cheesy looking arrow there, but there's the base of that northwest flow. You have another shortwave trough that's rotating around the big system that's in the Canadian Maritimes. That's actually only going to enforce that northwest flow in New England even more. Okay, you would have to have what you would have to see at the very minimum. Okay, you see where I have the black arrow drawn? If now I'm going to draw this kind of golden line on the map. All right, that is where you, at the very least, you want to see the base of the of the northwest flow, because that at least allows you to keep enough cold air across New England and back through the Great Lakes bleeding southward. And at the same time, this southern shortwave, which is now getting squashed to some degree, might have more of a chance to sharpen up or lift up northeastward, and a surface low at the very least would be able to come a bit further north before getting pushed out to the northeast. I just don't see it, folks. This is already, you're talking 1 a.m. Monday morning. It just is not going to happen. And it's complicated by the fact that you've got this upper low that drops into Iowa at the same time that's kind of kicking all of this along. Now, all this being said, I think this then means that we have to focus our attention on where this is going to be a big problem. And I think in the area, I'll draw it in green so you'll see it. Actually, that's probably not the best color to use. I'll draw it in blue because that's a cold color. So right in this area in here, I'm thinking that we could wind up seeing, fairly substantial snows. And in particular, if we go into the areas in western Virginia, westernmost North Carolina, some in this purple area that I've drawn, with where the upper low, where the trough is in the southern stream, the cold air that's going to be around, you're going to have very good dynamics here to produce some very heavy snowfalls in the area that I've indicated. I really don't see too much change in that in terms of the forecast, and I've gotten a bit more aggressive in the idea that there will be an area of 1 foot plus snows in those areas in western North Carolina and in western Virginia. I don't know too much about the local local climate, the history in terms of big snowfalls, what kind of numbers you might have to see. My understanding is, for example, Richmond, 9 inches would be considered an all-time record snowfall, I believe, for the month of December, or perhaps for this early in the date. But we are talking about what could be a rare snowstorm for this time of year. It's only December 5th. I mean, you do get big snows in the interior mid-Atlantic states, but you don't get them very often. And when you usually get them, you usually get them a little bit deeper into the winter and not so early. But we've seen how the beginning of this winter has evolved here with the early cold and also the early snows. The extent of the snow in North America this winter has been pretty solid. Just want to, I'm going to go back. I want to go, well, actually, before we even do that. So let's look at the surface map here. There is a problem with the 18Z runs from NSEP. The data, they're having issues. They're having data issues, so we only have it out through 108 hours, which is the last map, the map you're seeing here at this stage, where the low is off the coast and moving east. But here's the tighter view, and I don't have too much of a problem with this. The only thing I'm thinking is that the GFS is probably not cold enough with the northern extent of the area where you're seeing the snow and the sleet and freezing rain. I think that could be larger, and I think it's going to be colder. It did get a little bit expanded a bit more on this run. This model has typically, I think, had a very difficult time since last year after one of the upgrades. It seems like it's just too warm with stuff. So I'm thinking that you could wind up seeing a much larger area of snow and ice down in the interior mid-Atlantic. Here's the parallel GFS, which we actually have more of, so that's good. Now, here at this point, and this is Sunday afternoon, the parallel GFS is now showing sleet and freezing rain throughout much of North Georgia and into northwestern South Carolina, and a much larger area of snow in North Carolina and in eastern Tennessee, and even some heavy snow in southeastern Kentucky, southwestern Virginia. You can see where the northern fringe of this is. I'm looking at this for the first time. I think this is a reasonable look. So the idea that the area in the interior mid-Atlantic states could be larger, that gets the snow and ice, I think is reasonable. And the parallel gets the snow to just south of Washington, to the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, and that's it. And I think that's reasonable too, because of what we're seeing with the upper low, with the jet stream, and that northern jet it just can't, folks. You look, here's where it's moving, east northeast across the Gulf states. You're seeing some snow breaking out into Arkansas. Then it changes over to snow across northern Tennessee on this run. The low is just east of Myrtle Beach by Sunday afternoon. It wants to move northeast up the coast. That's the natural way for it to go. But there's that lot. You got this big high, the big surface high, and that is being held in check by that cold jet stream. You got this big high just kind of acting as a brick wall, and then the low just gets shoved out east-northeast. It actually just occludes out and redevelops. Part of it goes out, and a new, the back western edge low sort of hangs around. But here's what I was talking about with respect to the snow lingering for Monday into Monday night over a large area of North Carolina. This is at 8 o'clock Monday night, and it's still snowing across much of North Carolina, South Carolina from north of Columbia, northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee, and then finally by Tuesday morning it begins to pull away to the northeast. So this is going to be very, very interesting to watch evolve, because this could wind up being a major storm when it's all said and done. The total precip, very generous through Tuesday. We're talking 2 to 3 inches of liquid on the GFS. The WPC folks don't disagree with that. Neither do I. And we'll put up the snow maps. Let's see what the snow maps do. So here's 10 to 1. I mean, this is insane. These are some really big numbers. I couldn't put this on a forecast map. I just would never do that. but they're showing amounts of greater than 2 feet in some areas, and also that cold air being so much more important. That is the thing that's part of this equation that you have to remember. It's a double-edged sword. The cold air and that northwest flow that's bringing down the cold air and holding it in being much more important. If the jet were to pull out, the cold air will start to pull out to the northeast. So that would lessen the impact across the northern mid-Atlantic states. But with that jet holding, the high holds. If the high holds, the cold air bleeds southward and forces its way southward down the Appalachian Mountains. Again, the potential here for some pretty interesting amounts, to say the least. And the positive snow growth, do we have that here on this? We do not. I would have liked to have seen that. But also, if you want to be conservative, I would at least cut these amounts in half initially. We're still at Wednesday night. We're talking the bulk of this falling over the weekend. There's plenty of time for numbers to go up, but you get the idea here, folks. There is potential here for some places getting some large numbers as far as snowfall is concerned if it winds up snowing for as long as the GFS and the Europeans on the same page, by the way. So going out, once this storm is done, of course, we're going to see the pattern change a little bit. It still remains kind of busy, though, as we do have a storm that's going to be heading up to our west toward the end of next week, and the models have a fairly busy pattern, but there's not a whole lot of cold air that we're going to have to deal with. The cold air now, instead of being around in some form or another, is going to be more transient in nature because the pattern is pretty progressive here. Weather systems are going to move along. Ridge pops up in the east, not a particularly strong one, but we do get ridging in the east, but a lot of troughing out in the west. So we kind of have to wait. We're going to have to wait a while for that trough in the west to resolve itself, which it may do through time. I mean, I'm seeing some signs as we go deeper into the long range that eventually it will resolve itself, and you're going to start to try to shift the trough more back into the eastern part of the U.S. toward the latter part of December. I don't believe that this is going to be a wholesale breakdown of the overall pattern. I think you're seeing a logical temporary shift that should happen after being, we've been in this pattern pretty much since mid-October. So you're talking 8 weeks. That's pretty long for a pattern to hold. It's got to break down and refresh a little bit. And I think that's what we're going to see once this storm clears us early next week. We're going to have a bit of a break for about a week to 10 days, and then we'll start to see after a week probably the beginnings of a transition to whatever the next weather pattern holds for us. So that covers it pretty much tonight, folks. Again, just to go over really quick, I really think for the Northeast this is not going to be a problem. It's the interior mid-Atlantic states, south of Washington, D.C., down through Virginia, North Carolina, particularly as you go further to the west, west of Richmond, west of Raleigh-Durham, to the mountains. And I think there's a fair chance that you could extend this down into northwestern South Carolina and maybe into northeastern Georgia before it's all said and done. And we'll start to see more and more in the way of those winter storm watches going up as when we check back in at this time tomorrow. Johnny Quest, I mentioned you had your 4 inches of snow today. Elijah Blyden, welcome aboard. You have a strong feeling that it will shift north on Saturday like the one in 2016. The one in 2016, Elijah, I had a sense that that was gonna go further north, but you had some model support for that at a couple of days out. Right now they're all pretty much on the same page. I would like the NAM. It was the model that really kind of led the way on that, and we're not anywhere close to being in the NAM's range. But I just don't see it. Not with this one. Not with where that northern jet is forecast to be. So that's just my opinion. Believe if I thought there was a way to open the door a bit more, I would certainly go down that road. I've never been afraid to do that, and I'm certainly not going to be afraid to do it now. But right now I'm not seeing it. How is it that the CMC, which brings the storm far, now it's the CMC that brings the storm further north? The Canadian model, if you think back just to what it did yesterday, where it was taking a deep low, a deepening inland low, running northward with almost a full phase trough. We know that's not going to happen. So, how wrong was it then? I think it's still wrong now. It's too far north. It's just too far north, in my view. Jess Harden, you want to see snow in central Alabama? I think you're going to have to wait because you're not going to get it out of this one. I don't believe the cold air is going to be able to penetrate that far south. But if we get into some kind of pattern going into January that brings Arctic air all the way down into the Gulf states and down into North Florida, then you might get your opportunity. The tracks have been to the south with these systems, so I think it might be just a matter of time before you get a cold enough air mass to push all the way down. So I think you'll probably get a shot at some point during the winter for a deep, deep south snow. But I don't think it's going to be with this one. Brigantine, New Jersey got 7.5 inches in 6 hours. I know. Norland troughs will do that to you every single time. They leave forecasters with huge pits in their stomach while they're grappling with what's going to happen. And then when it winds up being completely the opposite of what they think it's going to be, they're back with the pit in the stomach again. Jimmy White, welcome aboard. Will Charlotte, North Carolina get hammered by snowfall and heavy ice accumulations? Well, I certainly think it's possible. I don't know. I haven't looked at it close enough to give you like an early number, all right? I would be a total guess on my part at this point, but I think the risk is there depending on how the cold air ultimately sets up. So you're going to be paying very close attention to your temperatures come Friday and Saturday, particularly at night, to see how low your temperatures get as the precip begins to arrive, because that's going to be very critical. And that cold air is likely to perhaps come in more and more once the low gets to your east. So a lot to watch there, but I think there's, is there a potential for 3 to 6 or maybe 6 plus? Yeah, I think there is. I think we could certainly put that on the table. But I have to tell you, in all honesty, your local forecasters know your area far better than I do. The topography, the elevation, and or the lack of elevation. So certainly pay attention to what they're saying as far as the forecast is concerned. The Euro, Peyton, was pretty much the same thing. The Euro offers, was actually further south than the GFS was, believe it or not, on the day run today. So we're getting these vacillations a little bit further north, a little bit further south. I much rather see a major change in the jet stream pattern develop in order to make it, for me to change my mind as far as what's going to happen up my way, which is pretty much eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. So we're talking big cities: Philadelphia, New York City, out to about Hartford. In that corridor. James Logan, the first snowfall is when everyone remembers how to drive or has forgotten how to drive. Correct. We already had that experience, James, back on November 15th. If you're down south, you seem to have that. In some places in the south, seem to have that experience every time it snows. I find it a little hard though in the mountains up near 81. I mean, it does snow much more there, so why should driving in snow be problematic in those areas? I don't know. Mark Gurley, welcome. I guess I'm going to get a lot of snow here in the foothills of North Carolina. I'm only 53 miles from Boone. Yeah, I think Hickory's in the spot. Greensboro West should probably do fairly well with this, with respect to the amounts of snow, and we'll of course zero in even more over the coming days. I used the thumbnail on this was a snowfall prediction that I had put up, an early prediction. So I'm being very conservative here. I have a post on my website that you can take a look at that has the map. I'm not gonna bring it up here now, but You can take a look at that if you go to meteorologistjoechaffee.com. The NAM medium range has done a good job. Well, the NAM already, by the way, at least as far out as it goes, and I will bring up. Hold on. Okay. I did notice this on the NAM today. All right, so where are we? So let's go. This is the 18Z NAM run. And we'll get nice and tight here. I did notice that at least out to 84 hours going out, it does seem to have more on the northwestern flank with snow into Oklahoma and Arkansas, and then the ice across Tennessee on that northern fringe. This is 1 a.m. Sunday morning. So precip is just going to be getting to arrive during the morning hours on Sunday across North Carolina, and then eventually spreading into Virginia. So Sunday's the day. At this time tomorrow night, we'll be in the NAM's inside the NAM's range, so we'll be able to take a look at it. And I think the NAM will probably be a pretty good indicator of how cold the atmosphere actually is, how important that cold air is going to be for this entire event. It's interesting that even for areas, I know some of you folks that are on here tonight watching from the interior mid-Atlantic or throughout the mid-Atlantic states and in the Tennessee Valley, being outside that area, I certainly get to watch with a lot more objectivity. So I try to always be objective in my forecasts for either home or wherever I'm looking at, but I'm going to maybe do a little extra focusing tonight on what whether the models are doing as far as coming up with something that I feel pretty good with as a forecast, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow. All right, folks, going to cut it short at this point. Thanks very much for being here. We are going to be doing our Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight on Facebook at 9:15 with my colleague Joe Rayo. So just go to my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and we'll do this all over again, and maybe have a few additional new things to show. If you're in the New York City, New Jersey, northern New Jersey, Long Island, southern Connecticut, and the lower Hudson Valley area, I have a free app that is available on Google Play for Android. Don't have the iPhone version yet, hopefully any day now, but I put the link up on the chat, so for those of you who have an Android device, you can download the free app, and then you could follow my posts, and you can actually even watch the live streams from the app as well. The other thing I would like to just call attention to is my weather platform that I have on Patreon, which is a crowdfunding site. This is a easy way to not only get a ton of weather, but you're with a lot of other weather people that share their passion for weather, and we have extra posts on there that are not on the website. We do live streams just for Patreon members, by the way, exclusive for Patreon members. We usually do that during the first part of the day. The evening live stream on YouTube is open to all, but the morning one is for the Patreon folks. So I just put the link up for that. It's just $2 a month, and if weather's your thing, that is an option. And if you able to combine it with my regular app, even better. Also, one other thing, if you do your shopping on Amazon, you can use my link to Amazon, and that's a way of supporting my channel. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated site. So if you shop on Amazon, you get your stuff, and Amazon throws me back some coin, a few cigars in my Christmas stocking, and it is it's an easy way to do it. Thank you for those of you who have. A week from tonight, thanks Scott Briller, I will be at the Babylon Library at 7 o'clock. That's on Long Island. And I've got a Jersey booking, by the way, Scott, the Westwood Library in Westwood, New Jersey. But that's in March. That's going to be on March 12th. So got a definite solid New Jersey booking there. Rick 8013, thank you for being here. Time for a cigar? Well, maybe not yet, but perhaps a little bit later on my drive home. And we'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for our regular YouTube live stream. Good night, everybody.